I'm joined by Hall of Famer John Smoltz. Smoltzy, tell me this. What's harder, winning a Cy Young or an Emmy Award?
Oh, man. Winning a Cy Young. It takes a lot longer to happen. You know, it's funny when you mention something like that. I just go back to all those years of being predicted to win and just feeling like a failure. But in 96, fortunately, I was able to at least get that off my back because that was starting to bother me.
Download the Brett Boone Podcast, available on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast.
Radio 24/7. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily, KFH. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor alongside you here on this Wednesday. Hey, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is coming to Boulevard Theaters in Wichita, and you can check it out a day early. We're giving away a pair of tickets for a special screening on Thursday, July 13th, 7 o'clock. That's at Boulevard Theaters, Town West. Again, Thursday, July 13th at 7 o'clock, a pair of tickets for a special screening, a sneak peek, if you will. We'll give away a couple of those tickets to our first caller here in this segment to get you into that movie, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. It looks exactly like you think it would. Mission Impossible, blow it up, fly around on jets, do all the cool stuff. Here we go. All right, Tommy, let's talk a little Major League Baseball. Yesterday, Mike Trout in the last couple of days has a wrist injury. He's having a down year. Yesterday, Shohei Ohtani had to leave the game. He was pitching because he continues to have like fingernail blister type issues. Anthony Rindon fouled a ball off of his foot, so he had to also leave the game. So there goes your three best players if you're the Angels, who are trying to cling at 2 games above 500 to any sort of wild card life. But, man, it just seems like there's about a 0% chance that Shohei Ohtani is going to be an Angel after this year. Right? Like, I don't see any path to that.
Is there a more snake-bitten franchise in Major League Baseball, maybe over the last, 5 seasons than the Angels, and maybe even going back further than that? And we talked about it before. When you have talent, generational talent on your roster in the form of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, there are multiple teams in Major League Baseball that would kill to have one of those guys on their roster. And the Angels have both of them, and they've been unable to get it done. I have a hard time thinking that the Angels are going to be able to come back from this and have the wherewithal to get back into the playoff hunt. Depends on how long Mike Trout is on the injured list for with that broken hamate bone. And then if Shohei Ohtani, I wouldn't be surprised if they rest him pitching. He already said he wasn't going to pitch in the All-Star game because of that blister. So the timing on that is okay. Because you get that all-star break to be able to rest and heal up. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if they maybe hold him back a little bit in pitching over the next, 2 or 3 weeks or so, just to make sure that he's healthy. But, man, they've got a lot of work to do if they want to get back into contention. I know that they are in the mix for a wild card spot. But, man, with that kind of talent on your roster, I know they've got to compete in a division with the Astros and the Rangers and even the Mariners and their young talent. But, man, I would have thought more from the Angels, and I've thought that the last couple of years, like with those two guys, and then, of course, you add in Anthony Rindon and others, they should be a playoff team, and they just really haven't been.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're the fourth best team in their own division. I think Seattle's better on paper and a game behind them in the standings. So I don't think it's very likely, honestly. Unless they made some big-time trade deadline moves, which don't make a lot of sense in the addition. But that brings up the elephant in the room, Tommy. Should the Angels think about trading away Shohei Ohtani here? I don't know how you could justify it to your fan base when you're technically in contention. But I feel like for the franchise itself, like the best thing that could happen is they go on a bad losing streak here, get further out of contention right before the deadline. And then if that happens, again, because I don't think there's any chance Ohtani's coming back there, I think you could have a fascinating trade scenario if that were to become the case. And, like, could you imagine even on the rental, like, because you could get him as the pitcher, right, for the postseason and as the hitter. Oh, boy. Like, because I'd do it if I was the Angels. I'd do it in a second because you're going to get a haul for a rental player when you don't typically get hauls for rental players anymore.
But is there a team that would be willing to give up
the Rangers
everything?
Would do it in a second.
Really? I mean, you're basically depleting your farm system, right, for a rental? And that we've seen that sort of thing before. Like, we've seen teams, throw a couple of prospects out to get a superstar for a rental down the stretch, but nobody at the level of Shohei Ohtani. So that would make me think that, I mean, how many prospects are we talking? 4, 5? What are we looking at here?
Maybe. I don't know that it would be that big. I think you do it like a team like the Rangers would do it because they're pretty set now and have spent the money where it's not like they're in a dire need for their prospects to come up anyway. So I think they would be in a position to do something like that. And the other thing about trading for Ohtani is in the back of your head, maybe it makes you think like, okay, and then we could also start the negotiating table of his free agency early, and maybe at that point we could, get a leg up on the competition there. And like for a team like Texas or, and I think there are probably others in the mix that would come in the mix. I think the Yankees would do it.
Yeah.
I think Toronto would probably be in the mix and be thinking about it. It's teams.
The Giants
the
would
Yankees,
do it. I think the Dodgers would do it.
The Dodgers would do it because I think they're in the leader in the clubhouse to get him in the offseason anyway. But they may also see that as, we can get him for free. We probably don't want
I'm not sure that there's any scenario where the Angels trade him within the division. So I can't see
that would be the only holdup. But that's such a stupid thing, by the way. Like, why did take the best return? Like, why do you care about that? Take the best return because that's ultimately what's going to make the difference for your franchise anyway. I don't think if Texas did trade for him, and I haven't heard that, by the way, I haven't seen any reporting that they'd be interested. I still don't think that's going to be where he ends up in free agency. Most people you read think it's going to be the Dodgers. I don't know what it will take there, but just from a rental perspective, a guy that helps you both places, just like his free agency will be, becomes, a trade asset unlike any we've ever seen before because he's like trading for two players. And, there are a lot of paths to do it, but some of these teams like the Rangers, the Blue Jays, like some of these teams that don't have a World Series that have been so close, and it's in the Blue Jays case, it's been so long, right? More than 30 years. Like that's where you're like, let's give our fans this because both of those organizations are pretty set. Now, the Rangers don't really have that type of prospect where it's like a can't touch, no chance in hell we're trading this guy. I don't know that type player has to be included in this, but it could be most of the top end. You give up 2-3 blue chippers, basically, top 100, top 50 type prospects and get this done, and I think it would be a price worth paying if you're trying to get that ultimate prize, but it has to be a team that isn't going to sacrifice. Like Baltimore's not doing this because Baltimore needs those prospects to survive. It's got to be one of the teams that can survive in free agency, who can be a player in free agency, not have to worry about that as much. But it's an interesting scenario to think of because the Angels aren't going to get there this year unless they go nuts adding pieces through the trade deadline. And from everything that I've heard, read, whatever, it's like a 0% chance he comes back to the Angels. So if that's the case and you're the Angels, put him on the market. Like, even Shohei Ohtani's not immune to that. Like, your fan base may hate that for right now. That may just, like, devastate them. But you can get them on board with that. Like, guys, we understand that we don't think that we were going to be a player for him in the offseason. The reality of the situation is we had a chance to really, strengthen our organization, so we're going to make this deal. I think the fans would be on board with that pretty quick, as long as you make the right trade.
Yeah, you better hope, too, if you are the Angels front office, that this blister from Shohei Ohtani is nothing major and that he's able to come back because, I mean, there's going to be a team that would trade for him regardless because of he's a unicorn, right? But you want him if you are even going to entertain the potential of trading him before the deadline. You want to make sure that you are getting 100% value in return from him. You want to make sure that he's performing at 100%, that he's not dealing with blisters. He might be able to still hit and play DH and do all that, but if there are issues pitching, then that might bring down the value slightly. So this is going to be, if the Angels want to entertain the idea of moving him before the deadline, then you've got the opportunity to get a haul in return. Make sure that he's at 100% before you do so.
Yeah, he's out. I mean, I don't think there's that many unequivocal reports that say he's out if he's not out. He must be making that known. I don't know where that stuff's coming from, but if he's out, if he's not going to be an Angel, trade him. Why wouldn't you? Like, why not? I suppose you could say because we think we can make the playoffs this year, and that's an acceptable answer. But if it goes south on you quickly here, when you look at the landscape of the American League, right, you've got to, like, in theory, Houston and Texas are ahead of you in your own division. Seattle might be, and then you're going to have to deal with some combination, assuming Tampa hangs on, right? Some combination of Baltimore, the Yankees, Toronto, Boston. So the Angels are basically trying to position with Baltimore, the Yankees, Toronto, Boston, Houston, Seattle. I'd put the Angels at the bottom of that list, right? Like,
yeah, I think you're right.
It doesn't feel like they're particularly close in that
because
wild card spot to
a
me.
lot of those other teams are more complete. The Angels are more top heavy, and now, I mean, I don't even know if you can call them more top heavy now that Mike Trout's on the injured list, but they're not. They don't have a complete roster. They've got a couple of superstars, but they don't have a complete roster like some of these other teams in the American League do. And so if you, especially even in your division, if you're trying to go up against the complete top to bottom roster that Houston has and that Tampa Bay has and that even Texas has, you're going to need to do more. Even as amazing and brilliant as Shohei Ohtani is, he can't do it all by himself. He's directly led to quite a few wins for that franchise, but he can't single-handedly take you to the playoffs.
Their offense is great. Their pitching is not. Of that group of teams, and if you include Seattle there, which Cleveland, there, some might, they have the worst pitching of the group. They've allowed the most runs. Boston's right there with them, but everybody else, it's a pretty healthy margin that they've allowed more. So it's not, it doesn't look like a team that is going to all of a sudden catapult themselves there, and you're grasping at straws. And I know that you've got the ire for not being able to do anything when you've had Trout and now Ohtani, and Trout's, over the hump in his career, and we've likely seen the best of Mike Trout. It's now a question of how long can he extend it, but it's not going to work. Like, you're going to have to bite the bullet. You're going to, because if he's not coming back, like, if you don't have a legitimate thought that you could get him back, you might be able to change the trajectory of your franchise on a rental player. That doesn't happen anymore. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. But it would for him. He's the guy. I never advocate for that kind of thing, but I would totally do that for Shohei Ohtani based on what he could impact for your team going down the stretch if you're a contender. Maybe they think they are contenders. I don't know, but it's an interesting dynamic. Sort of ahead of what's going to be a fascinating free agency to see if he, for any reason, becomes a trade candidate. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Odyssey and KYN bring you Concerts in the Park, sponsored by IHOP. Free live music Friday from 8 to 10 in Andover Central Park at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater, 1607 East Central Avenue in Andover. This Friday, it's Lucky People. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, extra cash for the food trucks, no coolers. Gates open at 6:30. Tom and I'll be back. We'll talk a little hot dog eating next.